Welcome to Superb Sports. I am the host Hookshot Drew, and today we'll be covering the unique positions of the gridiron. Football is a game of history and tradition, a game of chess with human beings moving around the gridiron board, fighting for open spaces, and ever advancing down the field in a ploy to reach pay dirt. The game is simple and primal, yet complex and utterly sophisticated. Football has been fluid and ever-changing, from the leather helmets to the Gatorade towels hanging from the hip of seemingly every NFL quarterback. As the NFL has changed, so have the utilities of the football player. Schemes, game day game plans, and personnel all play a part in determining how a football player will be used. As time has passed, so has the need for certain unique position types that fit the need of that team's strategies. In today's video, we will discuss several positions that have either died out completely or are seldom used in today's NFL, and what they were used for and why. We'll start off with briefly explaining some basic football formations and rules. Generally, there are 5 offensive positions protecting the backfield, 2 tackles flanking 2 guards that are each flanking the center, who is obviously the center of the offensive line. The center is generally the one who starts the play by hiking or snapping the ball. Now, even though there are offensive linemen who will always line up on the line of scrimmage, which is the invisible line across the field signifying where the play begins and where the football should be hiked from. I guess I should just stop at this point and explain, guys. I get that most of you are probably sports fans, so I won't go over all of this on a granular level. But just know there might be some people here that are new to sports, and that's exactly why we're here, guys, to educate anyone who might be interested in sports. So if you think, hey, Hookshot Drew, why are you explaining this to me? I already know all this. Well, that's your answer. You're not the only one out here. There's other people who may not know as much as you, and there's people who might be able to teach me something. We're all here to learn from each other. With that out of the way, there are a couple of things to consider when offenses line up. There still have to be 7 offensive players lined up directly in a line of scrimmage, and linemen cannot catch passes unless checked in as eligible by signaling to the referee and lining up behind the line of scrimmage, usually by a yard or so. This means in addition to the 5 linemen, teams have to find 2 more players to line up on the line. But this does mean that the 4 other guys get to line up anywhere beyond that, including shuffling around the other 7 guys. Let's get started now, bearing this all in mind. Starting us off is the original end position. Back when football was extremely run heavy and the forward pass wasn't even close to being perfected, teams were constantly creating new blocking schemes with misdirections and unique play designs to get faster players in open fields. A big part of an offense was the work of the ends, which were a versatile and pretty broad position with a lot of these players in the day playing both offense and defense. Ends in this time were both wide receivers and tight ends, as they were used to satisfy the 7 men on the line of scrimmage rule, but they were also expected to block and run out for passes. For the most part, they were used to block for the run game, but as time went on, they were relied on as the forward pass developed. Don Hutson, who played with the Green Bay Packers back in the 30s and 40s, is perhaps the most prolific pass-catching end, as his 99 reception touchdowns was first in NFL history for over 40 years until Steve Largent broke that in the 80s. In addition to their duties on offense, ends were used on defense to stop runners from running outside on sweeps and other runs, as well as covering the opposing ends in coverage. That former Don Hutson intercepted 30 passes in his career, including his league-leading 6 in his rookie year, although he did play some safety as well. The end has evolved arguably more than any other position, as it's the predecessor to the tight end and wide receiver. Ends on defense hasn't changed much in terms of where they are on the field, but responsibilities have changed, of course. Defensive ends are expected to rush the passer primarily and keep contained on outside runs, while rarely being used in pass coverage. Next is the wingback, a position used primarily in triple option offensive formations in college football, with Nebraska being perhaps the most recognizable historical user of this set. More popular known during the time is the single wing formation. The most popular variant of single wing features heavy sets on the right side of the line, using the traditional 5 offensive linemen, but instead both tackles are on the right side of the line, flanking the right guard. Depending on the team's personnel and game plan, they can either have one or both ends flank the tackles, creating a very stout offensive line on the right side. The wingback, now it's coming together, then sits about a yard off the line of scrimmage, to the right of the end. The quarterback sits directly behind the left tackle, with the fullback flanking the quarterback, at this time about 3 to 4 yards back from the line of scrimmage, while the tailback sits even further, flanking the fullback about 4 to 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. I know this might come off as mundane in details, but this formation was designed this way for a reason. It was to confuse the defense with pre-snap motions and find holes in the defense. This formation meant 4 different players, the quarterback, fullback, tailback, and wingback, could all get direct snaps from center from pre-snap motions, and have chances to find holes and confuse the defense. As you can see in this photo, quarterbacks weren't the primary ball handler, as they were primarily used for blocks and play calling at the line of scrimmage. Tailbacks were the primary playmakers, as they were usually the fastest players on offense and were the more all-around athletes, as some were expected to punt, pass the ball, block, and still play defense. Imagine running backs being used to do these things now. Fullbacks, on the other hand, were the bruisers. They were the battering ram of the blockers. They cleared the way for tailbacks and carried the ball inside the tackles when it was time to pick up tough yards in short yardage situations. Wingbacks in particular were usually expected to provide critical blocks in the right moments. A lot of the blocking concepts they utilized predated wham blocks, wedge blocks, double teams, and pulls from guards. As offenses modernized and the forward pass became a more viable way to move the football downfield, wingbacks slowly faded, more or less blending with ends to become the modern-day tight end. Offensive guards have picked up more athletic blocking assignment tendencies as well, sometimes pulling to aid the tight end or tackle in sealing a blocking lane for a tailback to hit the second gear into the sweet open field. I think here's a good time to cover the papa of the modern wide receiver, the split end. Additionally, the flanker could be seen as the daddy of the slot wide receiver. The split end was usually lined up on the opposite side of the tight end and lined up directly on the line of scrimmage to help satisfy the 7 men on the line rule. They were usually the most aware players in the field, as being so far from the center calling the plays, this meant they weren't as capable of hearing audibles from the rest of their team. They also needed to be very smart and make quick decisions, as they were expected to run pass catching patterns designed to find holes in the defense, even being given free rein to change their route to adjust to a defense's coverage. In addition to their mental requirements, split ends needed to be big and physical, as rules protecting them from jams from the defenses were far more lax than today, often appearing more like assault and battery than a simple bump to slow down or mess up a timing route. See these highlights from Dick Night Train Lane for reference here. Brutal, huh? They also needed to possess good speed to get downfield quickly and spread the defense thin for a deep pass. Especially during the days of heavy run sets, defenses usually didn't commit to safety help. So if a split end could get around the jam and get behind that defender, he was usually wide open for a pass. Lined up on the opposite side of the field as a split end and flanking a tight end, the flanker, in case you didn't quite understand the name, sat about a yard off the line of scrimmage and right off the flank of the offensive line. Flankers were often the team's most dangerous player in space. The smaller, quicker statures associated with flankers, paired with those good natural hands, meant flankers could catch high volumes of passes and be heavily featured in the offense. In addition, them being off the line of scrimmage meant they were able to get that extra space to build momentum and otherwise avoid jams from defenders. The idea of finding soft spots in the zone came from the style in which flankers made their bread and butter, as short routes often resembling backyard football, by simply just running into an area where defenders were not, they were able to use their short area burst and agility to make quick twitch movements, stopping and catching a football and quickly accelerating and eluding defenders. Top end speed wasn't as required as the split ends, but short area burst was a must. Again, as NFL offenses were modernizing and the forward pass developed, the flanker split end mold continued to shift and evolve. The flanker eventually spawned 2 separate positions, the Z receiver and the slot wide receiver, also called the Y. Although some football purists are probably going to argue with me that slot receivers and flankers are different, I'd argue that the modern slot receiver fits the responsibilities of the old flanker more than they would realize, especially considering the slot back's role, which is only used in Canadian arena football leagues, and most would consider the real parent of the modern slot receiver. They don't really share too many responsibilities. You see, football has been played for over 100 years in multiple formats across multiple countries with varying levels of amateurism and professional leagues. This means arguing about these things largely comes down to semantics, but feel free to fight down in the comments below. What makes the Z receiver and the slot wide receiver immediately different from one another is the way they line up on the field. The modern Z wide receiver will line up opposite the split end, which is now referred to as the X receiver, on the same side of the tight end, and as a result they are off the line of scrimmage. They are usually smaller than X receivers and in a lot of cases faster. They usually use that extra space to blow by defenders, and since they are on the same side as the tight end, they also have better opportunities for one-on-one matchups. Top end speed is usually paramount here, especially in the modern times. Slot wide receivers, on the other hand, usually line up on the same side as the X wide receiver, mostly away from the tight ends. Lining up in this way gives both the X receiver, the Z receiver, the Y receiver, and the slots better chances for one-on-one matchups by spreading the defense thin, uncovering all soft spots in the zone. It's no coincidence that the slot wide receivers stay pretty close to the offensive linemen, just as the flankers in the past. The slot wide receivers are crafty and will maneuver through traffic and their blockers to find space and cause matchup problems within the defense. The age-old chess match continues, except instead of run-heavy offenses with an abundance of blockers, several highly specialized players spread the defense thin, with defenses needing to be quicker to diagnose and react to shut down a play. Misdirection will always be a big part of the game, but flat-out speed and smarter play designs putting defenses on islands by themselves means the game in essence has become even more cerebral and less of 22 men piling into each other after 3 to 4 yard gains. Another lesser used position, I guess you could call it the neglected love child of the wing back and flanker, was the H-back position. In modern times, this is essentially another tight end. Again, football purists can fight me down in the comments, but this is basically all it is. Okay, of course context first. The H-back position itself was popularized by the legendary Joe Gibbs of the Washington to specifically deal with the world beater that was Lawrence Taylor. You ever heard of him? Seeing as even with the renowned as the offensive line was affectionately called, Lawrence Taylor could not and would not be stopped. The H-back, in essence, is an extra blocker that specializes in lead blocks in the run game as well as assisting with pass protection, particularly with pass rushers. They are still used sometimes to catch passes, especially over the middle. Sounds a lot like a tight end, doesn't it? We've covered some pretty antique positions here so far, positions that have evolved and spawned new ones or simply vanished entirely after fulfilling its purpose. But now it's time for me to mention a modern position that has been dying a long and very painful death, the fullback position. Yes, the fullback position has been steadily declining for a long time at this point, and it's hardly a secret, but its legacy is a deep and rich one that goes back to the old times of muddy fields, tales of men doing battle in the elements, slamming bodies with sweat and spittle flying through the air, with the smell of blood faintly circulating in the air. It was a time of men who didn't care much about how much they were being paid or what endorsements their agents had cooked up. It was for the passion of the game, with the toothless grins of many gridiron greats, testament to the price they paid to play the game they loved. Misty-eyed nostalgia aside, this is a side effect of the passing game emerging, as yes, I know at this point we've beaten that point in well enough. Fullbacks were usually burly, stocky, muscular, vascular. Excuse me, got lost there. Men that carried that ball in short yardage situations or otherwise bowled their way through the nose of the defense. The best teams of the early days of the Super Bowl era had a great fullback and a great tailback, a 1-2 punch type system in which the fullback tired the defense out with punishing runs while also leading blocks and wiping out defenders to clear pass for the very speedy tailbacks. The Miami Dolphins, Green Bay Packers, Pittsburgh Steelers, Dallas Cowboys, Oakland Raiders, and Kansas City Chiefs all won championships in the early days of the Super Bowl, with fullbacks taking as many carries, or even more in some cases, than the primary tailback. Franco Harris, Jim Taylor, and Larry Zonker are just a few very famous names of fullbacks that shouldered the largest loads of their team's offenses. Perhaps none as iconic as the great John Riggins in Super Bowl 17, fullbacks have had plenty of moments in the sun on the Super Bowl stage. As the modern offense has changed, so has the modern fullback. They begin to carry the ball less overall, with more deliberate play designs when they were featured. Short yardage situations were almost exclusively the situations used for these fullbacks as the late 80s came and gone. Outside of the occasional Roger Craig or Larry Centers, they became almost exclusively lead blockers for running backs. Fast forward to current times in the 2021 season, and there are only a handful of fullbacks left. The ones that are around are on run-heavy teams and aren't used on every down. As the run game has become less important, the role of the fullback has coincided with that shift. The ones that continue to thrive are the ones that have been able to adapt to the modern style, becoming valuable pass catchers out of the backfield and crafty lead blockers. It was about this point in my research that I realized this topic's not going to be covered in just one video. This video has effectively been over positions that have gone extinct or are on the way to becoming extinct. In the next video, we will go over positions that have been created in modern times to keep up with the ever-changing NFL ecosystem. Stay tuned for more. Like and comment if you like this video, and subscribe so you don't miss out on part 2 of the series. Feel free to give us any ideas on videos or any details we may have missed in the comments below. We look forward to growing with you, and we look forward to getting to know each one of you. I am Hookshot Drew, and thank you for joining me in this one.